All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. I know there's an exciting presentation next door on Woodstock Next Gen, so it means a lot that you've joined us here today. I was chatting with Luke in between coffee breaks about all the experience and perspective in this room, whether you work in the field, in the office, in a boardroom, any combination, and we're thrilled to be a part of it. Now, the overall theme of this conference is something I think near and dear to all of our hearts about shaping the future of forest intelligence. And that's really what we want to build on today. Yesterday, you heard from the Remsoft team about the work they're doing to shape the industry, as well as how each other is utilizing forest intelligence through demos, conversations yesterday, presentations today. Now, what we want to focus on in our session here is really how that intelligence, all the data and insights that you and your teams generate every day can come together to reach further, work harder, and ultimately make better and faster decisions across the org. All right, so our title for our session is Scaling Forest Intelligence Across the Enterprise. And that word scaling is actually really intentional, not just because it could be debatably a forestry pun, but our chat today really isn't about necessarily generating any new data. It's about making the intelligence that you have work harder, reaching more people, informing more insight, and ultimately creating impact. And that's what we're going to be unpacking. Now, Sasha did us absolute justice, almost made us blush there. Great intro, Sasha. But just some quick introductions as we kick things off. Myself and my colleague Luke will be presenting, and we support commercial forestry at Esri. So we spend a ton of our time working with organizations like yours, and actually a lot of you within this room, to help identify opportunities to add value through GIS. And even to Jason's point in his last presentation, better understanding how to fully utilize and capitalize your geospatial investments, actually a lot of the daily work that we do. Now, although he's not up here presenting with us, our leader, Adam Pittman's in the room too. Adam, I don't know if you want to give a wave, say hello. There you go. Um, and a face that we actually have in the room as well. Chantel, do you want to give a quick wave here from Esri Canada? So, broader part of the forestry team here. If you have any questions after the session or just want to continue the conversation, please feel free to find us and say hello. All right, now this may be very familiar for a lot of you and maybe for a few less, but regardless, I do think it's important to anchor on who Esri is and what we mean when we talk about geospatial or location intelligence. Now, at our core, we're the global leader in mapping and spatial analytics. We build a platform called ArcGIS that, while it's composed of different products and supports core capabilities, the idea behind it is actually quite simple and straightforward. It's about helping integrate location intelligence into the way that organizations understand, plan, and act. Now, we've been doing this for over 57 years, founded in 1969. And though throughout that whole time, we've been supporting organizations in solving complex spatial problems and evolving alongside advancements in technology throughout the way to really help support our mission. And throughout that time, we've developed what we call the geographic approach, an idea that by bringing location to the forefront of how we think and decide, we can understand our business, but also the world around us more holistically to help make better data driven decisions. Now, this idea of spatial intelligence, I think, is really at the heart of the conference and what a lot of us are talking about and doing here today. Now, ArcGIS is trusted and used by organizations globally, and is probably a lot of how you and your teams are working today. We've seen lots of fantastic examples of that. And for those of you using core components of the Remsoft platform, ArcGIS is a foundational enabler for components of that along the way, too. Okay, so let me ask you something. Maybe indulge me with a little raise of hands. How many of you or your organizations are using a forest management system today? All right. Now raise your hand if your organization is leveraging any form of remote sensing, imagery, whether that's drone, satellite, LiDAR. Okay, shy people, very low hands, but we've got some of that. All right, and then who here has teams that manage their own growth and yield models? Exactly. Okay. So beyond a bit of a shoulder workout, the point that I'm trying to make here is that you all are generating intelligence constantly. And I think more importantly, You're relying on that intelligence to help inform what happens next, right? In our day to day work, in our operations. But here's the challenge that Luke and I and Adam hear really consistently is that intelligence lives in different places. It doesn't always easily connect or flow seamlessly between different systems, between different solutions. And often it doesn't reach the teams who need it or could find value in it to create their day to day decisions. So, that collectively, I think, is our opportunity and why a lot of us are here to really understand how we can connect intelligence across our business, our operations, so that it flows more freely and powers decision making really at every level. And here's a way to think about maybe that progression, a geospatial journey, if you will. Now, this isn't a rigid model, and if anything, you're probably not going to fit neatly into a box. But I do think this is a useful framework to describe how organizations really start adopting forest technology in the space. Now, the first stage is all about specialized tools. And this first box or bucket is actually a really big spectrum. It can be the start of an organization's digital transformation, and it can then also involve a series of specialized tools or point solutions where people are collecting information, but they don't yet talk to each other. Now, the second phase is where we start to see connected systems. And I would argue by default, everyone in this room is in kind of this second bucket and beyond, right? Where Remsoft systems are a great example where data integrates and talks to each other across the value chain. You have other systems too, maybe other field data collection tools, financial systems. Some of that communication between those systems may still involve some semi manual or manual processes, but at the end of the day, information is starting to flow across solutions, teams, and the people who need them. Now, this third bucket is a bit of a destination and almost a moving goalpost in a way where the idea of having a spatial intelligence platform that captures your full business. I know a lot of us in this room represent woodlands and the type of work we do here, who are often the leaders of leveraging GIS, location intelligence, and forestry organizations. But think about this spatial intelligence platform more broadly: financial teams, R&D, carbon teams, whether it's real estate, maybe health and safety, all those aspects of GIS. So you have one centralized view of your business to support decisions. And maybe what I'll mention too as we transition is all of you are well along this path already. I think maybe if I go back a slide. Like I said, think about where you are. You're probably somewhere in between stage 2 and 3, and there's a lot of work that happens there. Obviously, this is a really oversimplified model, but there's, I think, different things that drive this, right? There's technology advancing, becoming more powerful, more accessible to users, but then there's also a lot changing in the way you work. And I just wanted to go back and reiterate this because we heard from Kevin yesterday on this about complexities, market volatility, climate change, different stakeholders, more voices in the room. And I think, if anything, there's more of a drive now than ever to integrate intelligence to help make these decisions. And that's really where our partnership comes in. So, Remsoft and Esri are key partners, and we wanted to take a moment to talk through what this partnership actually means and our shared vision together. Now, I think at the grounding core or principle of both organizations, it's all about helping you make more data driven decisions through intelligence. Now, Remsoft brings, as you know, deep forestry domain expertise and offers solutions across the full forestry value chain, being really your forest system or forest platform for intelligence. And Esri brings the global geospatial platform, ArcGIS, which connects spatial data from across other components of your business to help enable analytics and insights at scale. Now, together, I think our vision is actually pretty straightforward. It's connecting intelligence across your organization where insights from the Remsoft platform can flow into ArcGIS, connect with other data capabilities, and help give insight and better decisions to those who need it in your organization. Now, that's a bit about our partnership and why this collaboration makes a lot of sense. Maybe this is the lens that you can think through as we carry on with our presentation in the way that we collectively are integrating and advancing the forestry industry. All right, so we've talked a lot about the why. I think we can get into the how. Now, let's look at what it actually takes to build this concept of a spatial intelligence platform, really that end goal and vision inside a forestry organization. All right, so here's a bit of a high level conceptual diagram of what we're describing. On the left, you'll see your different intelligence systems. For all of you folks in this room, you'll have your forest intelligence platform being largely Remsoft to support from operations, long term harvest forecasts to decision support. You'll also have other internal and external systems as well. This could be property information, this could be financials, it could be SAP or CRM, it might be also external feeds, whether that's weather data or satellite imagery. Now, this is where your core business intelligence is really created on the left hand side of this diagram. In the middle, we have ArcGIS acting as the connective tissue, the spatial intelligence platform that brings it all together. And I think this matters for forestry because location's a common denominator for everything you do, whether it's the land you manage, where you operate, where you're harvesting, how volume flows, where products move. Everything is based in location. Now, by bringing that information together, it enables you not just to access that information quicker, but enrich it, whether that's through analysis and automation. So you have a more holistic and dynamic view of your landscape. Now, on the right is where that information really goes to work. It reaches the people who need it, and that can be in different ways, whether that's through apps, data, services. But at the end of the day, although this might seem like the easier part or maybe just more tangible in giving insight to data who need it, it takes a lot of time and thought to get people the information they need in a way that's easy, accessible, in a way that's dynamic, that's updated, and supports the actual decisions they need to make instead of overwhelming people with data, data density, and things that come along with that. One platform, one view, decisions at every level. So, this at a high level is what we mean when we talk about a spatial intelligence platform for forestry. Now, when we step back, there's really three key things happening here. The first part is connecting or integrating the intelligence from the left hand side of this diagram. The second part would then be enriching it through analysis and automation in ArcGIS. And the third part of that would be serving it out to the people who need it or really operationalizing those insights. And that is exactly what Luke Kelleher is going to talk us through in a forestry context.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me, everybody. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm going to talk through those three pillars that she mentioned there. And one of the key themes that I want everybody to take away from today, I hope, is that all of this is about delivering value, right? We have investments in these technologies and these systems. And we want to squeeze the most value out of them as we can. That could be tangible value in workflow savings and efficiencies. That could be opportunity cost. Whatever it is, at the end of the day, this is delivering value. So first thing we're going to talk about, as Sarah mentioned, is step one, right? That's connect. That's really bringing all your data together in one place. We've heard that yesterday, we heard that today. And the word we really want to lean on with this is interoperable, right? So ArcGIS is an open platform. It's built to connect with the systems that you already have in place, not replace them. As Sarah mentioned with the geographic approach, the whole idea is bringing the context of location to connect all these different disparate data sources together in one place really adds a layer, really adds a holistic view that helps us make the best decisions, right? And forestry, I know Kevin mentioned it yesterday. Forestry is certainly spatially inherent. It's probably one of the most spatially inherent businesses out there. So it just makes sense that location is that common thread that we can use going forward. And at the end of the day, you're not starting from scratch, right? You're connecting what you already have, you're making it work a lot harder, and you're adding value to it. The second step is enrich. So you've got your systems connected. You can start layering in these different capabilities that really deepen your understanding. Again, thinking about that context of geography, you can see what's happening across your land base faster, easier, more, more holistically. And there's three primary ways that I'm going to get into how we really enrich this data that we're seeing right now. Imagery and remote sensing is one. Advanced analytics is the second one. And the last one is AI and machine learning. So imagery and remote sensing is something that honestly I get pretty fired up about. Laura mentioned this morning, I think right now no one would argue that we have access to more data, more imagery data than we've ever had before, at different resolutions, at different time series, right? We've got freely available imagery through Sentinel and Landsat. We can subscribe to other imagery services. We have foresters that carry drones around. We have sensors on our phones, tablets, backpack LiDAR sensors, all kinds of things to collect all this data. And what we do with it really, again, is how we deliver that value. So here are just a couple quick examples of what we have seen used there. So again, with the idea of delivering these insights to your end users faster in a format that helps them make decisions faster. On the right is a very simple web app where we're using Sentinel imagery with NDVI as a proxy to measure canopy health. So over hundreds or thousands of stands, we can monitor monthly, weekly, quarterly, whatever it is, to understand if there are trends trending up or down. If there are trending down, it's certainly something we want to look at. And again, thinking back to that opportunity cost, we can then send a forester out there maybe with a drone for higher resolution imagery. Maybe they need to put boots on the ground. Whatever it is, we're focusing that forester's time on solving the problem and not spending time looking for a problem. The other two examples, the top one that you see playing through there is a facility inspection using drone imagery. So here again, we can use high resolution drone imagery to perform inspections that at times would take days maybe for staff to do. It also creates a lot more safer environment for them. They're not crawling around on scaffolding or anything else. We can even go so far as building in machine learning algorithms to spot these things ahead of time and help out. And then that bottom animation too is a post-harvest inspection where again, we're getting a more holistic view of things from the ground, how that might compare in the big picture of things. So whether it's satellite imagery, drone imagery, LiDAR, right, you can use these sources to really enrich your existing data and better reflect on conditions on the ground. We can monitor things, as I mentioned, faster, just really for that dynamic field-based, better than that dynamic field-based method. The next way we're going to talk about is advanced analytics. And honestly, advanced analytics means different things to different people. In the context of this discussion, we're going to talk about it in the context of these large spatial models, at scale that can do things and help uncover patterns, maybe discover risk that really help us make better decisions. A couple of examples here. So we've got examples of harvest polygon extraction through change detection. With EUDR, this of course has become more and more important and popular ways to automate these processes to give us the data faster. But we all know whether you have to participate in EUDR, we're always having to digitize polygons and kind of measure plan versus actual areas going forward. Another great example that's not listed up here, but I'll mention International Paper has developed an application they call Foresight, F-O-R-S-I-T-E, and it's something they've used to help drive their fiber sourcing policies across their operating area. And the way it works is all their foresters have access to this application. It includes a lot of different checks and balances for their due diligence to make sure they're meeting their corporate sustainability requirements. One of those is they've modeled the likelihood of T&E species and high conservation areas across their entire operating area. And they've aggregated that into these very elegant hex bins. So if a forester is considering purchasing wood off a track, they can very easily look at this, recognize if there is something of concern. It's not going to say there definitively is or isn't something out there, but it just says there is something here that we think needs your insights. A forester can then go on site, evaluate that, make a better decision. And not only do they have that decision, but they have the where, right? As I said, the context that they can then show to their customers to say, these are our commitments. This is how we're meeting them. This is where we're meeting them. And that just adds a lot of validity to the whole process. And the last one, AI and machine learning. So quick show of hands. Who's excited about AI going forward? All right. Cautious, optimistic? Over it? Anybody? Fair. So Esri it's an AI-enabled platform, right? Esri is not trying to create the next ChatGPT. Esri's approach is we're embedding AI across the entire platform for you to use as you see fit on your data, on your applications, on your infrastructure. We're giving you the tools to deploy those as needed, right? And we talk about AI within the Esri platform really within three legs of the stool. Geo AI is one of those legs. So that is deep learning models, machine learning models. This is something Esri's been doing for over 10 years. The short answer is Geo AI is essentially creating data, right? We're segmenting larger polygons into stands. We're extracting roads, we're extracting streams. We're using object identification to identify trees and maybe do pre-harvest stocking inspections, things like that. Um, AI assistants are something that are available now. You'll see more of this come out this year. So these are assistants that are embedded in the workflows that people use every day. These are designed to help you work faster, more efficiently. These things could be as simple as using natural language to create SQL queries in Pro if you're doing some advanced analyses. It could be as simple as computer vision in Survey 123, where instead of having to fill out a form, all someone has to do is take a picture. You have the picture. It also fills out a form, so you have the tabular piece there. Lots of things in between there, but we're very excited about that. There's some of those things now that are available. There's some of those things that are in beta that'll be generally available this year. Keep an eye out for that. And the last leg of that stool is generative AI and agentic AI. So generative AI is the ability to use natural language to interact with maps and data. There's something coming out, you'll see, it's in beta again, called Data Explorer. And again, this is a web map application, an instant app, where you can load in a web map, kind of tell it where to look for data, and users can use natural language and interact with that map and extract the data that they need based on their queries. And then agentic AI, of course, I think that's probably the most exciting. I was at a meeting in South Florida a couple weeks ago with some examples we've developed there, and that really has taken some of these mundane processes that we used to do within ArcGIS, automate those, make those faster, and help us uncover insights that maybe we didn't know we needed to look for. So Nextera is a company, they're one of the largest renewable energy producers in the US. They've developed some agents to help them manage their renewable energy projects to understand, based on weather patterns and predictive analytics there, are there solar energy sites that might have a large storm flying over that could impact output? Is that impact going to happen at a time where there's either a peak demand or whatever else, right? So it's helping them uncover these insights faster that normally would take, hours or days to figure out. And really, at the end of the day, building the spatial intelligence, as Sarah mentioned, these three pillars is only half the job. The other half is actually getting it to the people who need to make the decisions in a format that they can easily understand, right? We talk about, I'm sure you've seen the pyramid of data to decision, right? Data to insights. How fast we can get there is really where we deliver value. And so the third pillar that I'm going to touch on is operationalizing those two things, right? Operationalizing all of this, making it real to where we can actually boots on the ground deliver that value. And unfortunately, this is where a lot of organizations get stuck. You've done the work, you've connected the systems, you've enriched the data, you got real insights sitting on your platform, but you may or may not be able to get those to the staff that they need in a format that they can use easily. So we're going to talk about a few ways to do that. Some of these may be familiar, some of these may not, but we just at least wanted to cover them for um, your own insights. So web apps and web maps, these are purpose-built tools for your audience, right? So dashboards, experience builder, field focus apps like field maps or survey 123. These are configurable applications that you can design to deliver those insights to your end user in a format that best works for them, right? Things don't have to be super complicated. If we don't need additional charts, or maybe we do need charts, like you can customize those as needed. You'll see here a couple of examples. So the animation going on the top in the black is more or less a dynamic suitability analysis where we're querying 17 million acres in real time and allowing users to choose species, age, class, slope, a bunch of different variables, and then the map updates dynamically in real time. So again, if you want to run scenarios, maybe it's a planning application, that's a great way to do that. It's pretty low effort. On the bottom, you'll see a timber reconnaissance web application. So again, this syncs back to a field application where folks are going out collecting data. We can then use that for our planning. This next one is bringing spatial insights to the people who need them, right? So one of the best ways to do this, and probably something that everybody here in the room is doing that, is through either portals or hub sites. And we talk about portals, that's ArcGIS Online. Maybe that's your enterprise portal site. Those are customizable to brand as needed. One of the best examples I heard when I started is ExxonMobil, huge customer. They have something they call OneMap, right? It's their enterprise portal site that they've branded OneMap Exxon. 95% of people in Exxon can tell you what OneMap is, but they may or may not know that it's Esri behind that running that because they've done such a good job of just embedding those insights within that. And the other one I want to talk about too is called Hub. So this was something originally designed for municipalities to collaborate with their stakeholders and citizens. It's a way to kind of share data and allow folks to interact. We're seeing that move more towards commercial insights with folks who may set up an internal site. That's a way for you to communicate to your internal stakeholders, some of the GIS projects you're doing, some of the KPIs, return on investment, maybe that's data layers. We're also seeing other organizations build these out for some of their customers, right? So if it's a sustainability focused hub site, the customers know they can go there and extract some of the information they need. There might be purpose built web apps, web maps, stories, whatever else that allow them to interact with it. So it's just a great way to, again, get that data to people who need it to help them out with their decisions. And the last one I want to touch on that I think is probably underutilized that Sarah actually and I are actually doing a webinar on at the end of April, but it's this idea of collaboration, right? So again, show of hands, who's using Microsoft 365? Some form, Teams, yeah, just about everybody, right? It's the fabric that runs our business. So Microsoft and Esri have a very long-standing relationship, a huge integration. A lot of effort's been built into this. And the idea is bringing these spatial insights and GIS to where people are comfortable using, right? We're not forcing people to go outside of Excel if they just need to look at something, a web map of something. So they're across the 365 suite are integrations there within Teams. Um, we can both embed web maps and applications within a Teams channel. We can share layers and web maps through Teams. We can actually, through Teams meetings, you can share a web map through the meeting and folks can take control and kind of scroll around and annotate as needed, as opposed to each person having to constantly reshare their screen. We can geo-enable documents in SharePoint to kind of help easily query searching those. Um, Copilot, you can spatially enable Copilot to actually search for data layers, search for web maps, search for documents. Power BI, of course, was mentioned. That's a big one. And then the last one again is Power Automate, right? It's using these processes to help automate data collection, other things that will again deliver more time back to the forester. So a great example I've seen is a BMP inspection with Survey 123, maybe previously when someone completes a BMP inspection form, there's a PDF copy created that's emailed to the contractor. Maybe that's something that's filed away somewhere else. And now with Power Automate, we can kind of automate that whole process where as soon as a forester clicks submit, it all wraps up and it's done. So lots of ways there. And I covered a lot of ground, talked pretty fast, I'm sure. And at the end of the day, like we recognize that this is not as simple as just saying it out loud on the stage, right? I mean, Laura touched on, everybody's touched on it. Kind of bringing all these things together in one platform is a challenge, and we recognize that. And we hear a lot, this is great, but like, where do we get started? We got a whole list of other projects. We just need to know where we can get started. So for that, I'm gonna turn it back over to Sarah to bring us home.
All right, so here's really what we want you to take away from this session. Again, we covered a lot of ground, but most of you and the organizations in this room, you already have the core pieces to do this, whether it's through Microsoft 365 integration, the various apps Luke talked through, thinking about how to integrate and bring together your data, whether that's through data, services, application tiers, and then different levels of enrichment through analytics. So connect, enrich, operationalize. That's really the arc we want you to come away with. And you don't have to walk away and implement all three steps at once at your organization. In fact, some of the folks we see most successful don't start with a big platform initiative. They take a specific workflow or a user group and start to understand, okay, what data do they need to make their decisions? How can we integrate that or connect that data in a meaningful and holistic way? How do we then enrich that data so it's dynamic as our operations are constantly updating as new information and data sources are coming in, and then serve that out through operationalizing or mobilizing that insight in these really user built and user designed platforms to align with the KPIs, help drive real world impact so that you are getting full value out of all the intelligence that we're all constantly gathering every day, as well as your geospatial investment and taking advantage of the full and ever evolving capabilities as a part of that. So, one team, one workflow, one connection. I think that's a real start. In our experience, it makes it easier to scale. So with that, we wanted to leave you with a bit of a question before we open it up to Q&A, and this can be rhetorical, hypothetical. The intelligence exists. So the question we'd like to leave you is, What would you change in your organization, or what would change in your organization if forest intelligence flowed freely across your systems and teams? How would your work or decisions look different if everyone was working from the same view of your business holistically? Would there be less friction, to use Kevin's word from earlier? Would there be synergies? Where would the value exist from an ROI and efficiency perspective? So that's a part of what we would love you to think about as you leave this session, and we'd be happy to be a part of the conversation with you. So with that, would love to open it up to Q&A. Luke, if you want to join me up here. Any questions? Yeah, thank you. That's all good.
Before we get into the Q&A, I did steal Pablo's thunder a little bit earlier by introducing you two. So I'd like to just give Pablo a quick second just to give really a value add of just the partnership that we have and the benefits that it brings to you. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sasha. And just for the record, I was here 2 minutes early. So just for the record. So no, thank you very much, Sarah and Luke, for that. And I just wanted to say, put a little bit more flavor in the relationship. You guys have invested significant amount of money on Esri, and there is a lot of things that you can do. You don't need us to do it. And you have invested your effort, you have your teams, you have your workflows, and that's perfectly fine. What we offer is some customizable off-the-shelf solution that it has already those workflows, that it has already some of that functionality. And if that's going to help your business, this is great. But, you know, it is a partnership form because Esri is the best in GIS. And, we believe that we have the deep expertise in forestry and we can bring them together. But wanted to just make sure that anything that you do within Esri, anything that you take advantage of, everything that you have heard about today or any of the other things are still going to be able to be consumed by the platform, the forestry intelligence that we've been talking over the last few days. So it is just, it is not, we are not just having some APIs, we are intrinsically embedded within the Esri platform. So thank you very much for the presentation. I leave it for questions, but I wanted to thank you for the
Yeah.
support and for sponsoring the conference. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pablo. Are there any questions for Luke and Sarah? Oh, definitely getting my steps in for today.
Thank you. Rainer Münter from British Columbia. I have one question for you, and that is how can you make Esri or mapping interesting for accountants? Because we have a very small
For
team.
accountants.
We have a very small team, but there's no way that they ever would open an Esri application.
Yeah.
Their interest in space is limited to the location of the next cappuccino machine. And so can you embed a link to a map in an accounting system or something? And that's a barrier that we have not been able to breach.
Yeah.
The alternative is to teach foresters to be accountants, which is slave labor comparable to pounding
Sounds like a
stones,
liability.
stones in a quarry. Yeah, so.
Yeah. I think that's, oh yeah.
Have a lot of financial systems that integrate with Esri. I'll leave it with you, but it's hard to move beyond numbers on a spreadsheet, but maps are embedded within every Excel application that you use today.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So I think building off of Adam's point, they don't need to know or feel like they're even in GIS. It's not like we're asking accountants to open ArcGIS Pro, a heavyweight desktop app. It's actually about building that kind of user interface, whether it's through integrations of Microsoft 365 with Teams. We have integration with Power BI. We've got integrations with Excel. So there's different platforms you can choose to add that flavor. But I think a lot of the times it's these customized dashboarding elements where maybe there's a spatial view, but also the KPIs that are relevant to them. So it's dynamic. But from a kind of change management perspective, because I think that's also what you're getting at, is how do we get our accountants using something that has a spatial undertone to it? I think it's about showing them that it can add value, right? So again, I think a lot of us, in woodlands and timberlands where I think the majority of this conference lives, or maybe even IT and GIS. Typically, those things have some good overlap, but you're kind of the advocates for GIS in your organization, and that's where a lot of geospatial expertise in house lives. So, finding an example of the type of data they're using, where location and having a custom built platform could add value, showing them that, getting excited, proving it with typically a small pilot, right? And then all of a sudden, change management becomes a lot of an easier process. Because I do think there's two aspects to your question. There's the technical side on applications, and then there's also the change management and adoption.
Sarah, I'll add to
Mhm.
that really good answer. But one thing that people in this room might not realize, Esri and Microsoft have been partners for a very, very long time. Our old technology, the ArcGIS desktop platform, was the largest Microsoft COM project ever developed in the world. I don't know if a lot of people remember that COM technology and recognize that. So we have a deep relationship with Microsoft. But one really interesting thing that may appeal to anybody who's got similar accounting interests here is that you're all familiar with Power BI, you're familiar with Excel. Um, you probably, by that association, are familiar with Microsoft Fabric, which was their latest underlying platform. What quietly happened that probably none of you realize, and some of your teams may be using right now, is that Microsoft chose Esri to be the spatial backend for everything that happens in Microsoft Fabric. So they use our underlying technology for all spatial operators in Fabric, and it's just embedded. You never see the word ArcGIS. You never see uh, a map. You never see anything that just happens, but anything you do spatial within the Fabric platform, globally with Microsoft, it's all Esri on the back end of that. So that's a pretty cool thing. So I would imagine up in BC, your accountants, they have to be using Excel. They've got Power BI dashboards because they're looking at all their financials. Well, that all is inherently lives within the Fabric framework. So that's there just waiting for them. So to add to Sarah's point, a really cool thing as a GIS savvy, spatially aware person, you could actually help them by showing them where the work that they're doing and the numbers and the accounting and the things that they're doing, why they matter, how they match up with your assets. And you can actually empower them to ask questions using that spatial analytic background. And better yet, you don't have to do anything within your environment. It's already there. So I'll leave it at that.